first thing I want to tell you guys about is how I got my motorcycle license. Woo! It's time to be one other statistic. Yeah! If you don't know, which I don't know how you wouldn't know, I have been obsessed with one thing, one gift that I got from Cutie Cinderella for Christmas last year, my Vespa. I talk about my Vespa all the time, and I drive my Vespa around everywhere. Originally, I was obsessed with a walkable city. I live in America, and America sucks because none of the cities are walkable, or at least none of the cities I've lived in or towns I've lived in. And I've always dreamed of being able to walk to a coffee shop because I don't like getting in a car and beep, beep, or maybe defrosting. I hate it. So I like walking to places. But when I got my Vespa, it suddenly unlocked like more distance. It was like getting a bike in Pokemon. It was like, oh, traveling is not that cringe anymore, and I kind of enjoy it. My experience with the Vespa was pretty limited. The way it originally started is I went on a vineyard tour in Italy. It's actually fucked up. What it was supposed to be, a Jeep vineyard tour where we get drunk and they drive us around. And then the guy who runs the tour at the site was like, you guys know it's better if we do it on the Vespa. And so everybody was like, okay. And he's like, try the Vespa. And so he made everybody go down the line and try riding a Vespa. The entire test was literally this. And if you could ride down and come back, he would let you drive on the roads, the public roads with other cars in Florence, Italy. And so when it came up to my turn, and he was like, Ludwig, you ride Vespa? I did the thing that everybody likes to do sometimes, where I fucking lied. And I said, yes, sir, I do ride Vespa. And I wrote it in a circle, and he was like, looked a little bad, but good enough for me. And then I was able to ride a Vespa on the streets of Italy, and I fucking loved it. And when we got to Rome on this vacation, I rented another Vespa, and I rode that shit around all day. So when I got back to America, I was like, man, I want a Vespa. So Cutie was like, hey, don't get one for yourself. I'm going to get you one. And so she did. A bit weirdly, though, when the Vespa came and I started to use it, I noticed it was a little bit different than the one I got in Italy. It looked good. Everything worked fine. But the ones in Italy were going about 30 miles an hour. The Vespa she got me went 60 miles an hour. And I was like, that's fast. So I put a helmet on. And then I tried to look up because everyone, when I told them I had a Vespa, was like, Ludwig, don't you need a license to ride that? And I was like, no. It's like a scooter. It's like a toy. And then I looked it up online, and it was like, any vehicle above 49cc requires a license. And then I looked up speeds of a 49cc Vespa, and I was like, that's a lot lower than I'm going. I've gone 60 many times in this vehicle. The entire time, mind you, without my license. Now, I have racked up 900 miles on the Vespa. 900 miles without a license. Now, you look, I personally believe, as a libertarian, that I don't need a license to operate my motor vehicle that I purchased with my goddamn American dollars. Much like I don't need a license to operate my own damn toaster. Here's the thing about a Vespa. I don't cause harm to other people. The only person at risk on the Vespa is me. I'm the fucker who's going to die on it riding down the street. It's not like a car that's going to run into another car and kill them. I'm the one who will die if I drive poorly on the Vespa. So, like, why do I need a license to die? Is what I told myself because I didn't want to go to the DMV because the DMV is miserable. But eventually, like licenses do, my driver's license for cars expired. And so I had to go in to renew my driver's license on my birthday. And while I was at the DMV renewing my driver's license, I always do two things. One is that I go through the process of renewing it like everybody else. And two is I lie. How do I lie? Every time I renew my ID, I add 1 inch to my height. So I started out as 6 foot. Now I'm at 6'3". Thank you very much to me. I will take your congratulations. I will eventually be 6'4". But while I was filling out the form and I was putting in 6'3", 180 pounds, which I haven't weighed in 15 years, and hazel eyes, which is a little bit of a stretch, it asked me a question. Are you renewing, sir, today a driver's license for cars, for motorcycles, or for both? And I thought to myself, why don't I just renew for motorcycles? That way, I don't even have to get the fucking license. I'll just renew it. DMVs are probably all confuddled in the back. They're going to go clunk, clunk, stamp off the seal of approval and say that, yeah, the guy guess he's a motorcycle. I don't know. And I'll be able to walk out of there now legally driving my Vespa. Well, what I didn't expect is at the moment I hit renew for motorcycle, the lady behind the counter was like, sir, you need to do the test for motorcycle competency in the back. Window 2. I did not prepare for this. Now, I've ridden, again, 900 miles on my Vespa. I feel like I know a thing or two about riding a goddamn two-wheel vehicle. But I remember also my driver's test requiring a lot of information that you don't really learn driving. And I was like, nah, that's stressful. And to make things a little bit worse, when I walked up to the testing booth, the guy testing directly next to me was this 16-year-old who had come up to me earlier in that sitting area, and he'd said, Ludwig, dude, I love your content, man. And now I had to stand next to him while I was BSing my way through a test. The only thing that made me feel a little bit better is that kid was sweating bullets on the driver's one. I was looking over, and it was like, how far do you have to stay behind a parked school bus? And I was like, 15 feet. Come on, idiot. He was struggling, though. He was like, anyway, I sit down at this little thing, and I start my test, my motorcycle test. And the first question comes up, and it's like, okay, you are leaning left, turning left. Which direction are you going, left or right? And I'm like, easy, left. Bing, bing, bing. Correct. Next one. If it's raining, where does the water accumulate on a road? In the center of a lane, in between lanes, or on the side of the road? I'm like, side of the fucking road. Obviously, that's where rain goes, like gutters. Wrong. In the middle of the lane. How the fuck does that? Interestingly, though, when I got it wrong, it told me the correct answer was the center. I was like, huh. Another question comes up. When you have a car that is left in behind you, and they had a little graphic, and you are in front of them on your motorcycle, should you check your mirror if you want to go over, or should you look over your shoulder? And in my head, I'm like miming it out, and I'm like, yeah, I would fucking look over easily. But they probably want me to look in my mirror because that's safer. So I click mirror. Wrong. Check your blind spot. Uh-oh. I shit you not. I get 20 questions deep, and it says, failed. Because I got so many wrong within the first 20 questions on a 50-question test. And I was like, oh, I'm feeling dejected. I'm like, God damn it. Like, now I might be locked out from doing the test for a while. I'm going to have to study to do this test. Like, I'm already illegally driving this Vespa. I don't want to stop driving it, but now, like, I clearly can't drive it. But before I go back to the woman at the desk, I notice it says, would you like to take your car driver's test or your motorcycle driver's test? And I was like, let's go round 2. So I hit motorcycles test again. And now, because it showed me the answers that I got wrong, I know the right ones. And I go through 25 questions without batting an eye, get to 26, and I'm like, oh, fuck, this one's a little bit hard. And it's like, you are at an intersection. There is one car in front of you, one car to your right. Do you continue to go straight forward through the intersection if it's a yellow, or do you stop? And I'm like, and I end up failing, even though I had already known half the right answers a second time. I'm like, son of a bitch. But luckily, after failing the second time, I look up at the screen, and it says, do you want to take your car driver's test or motorcycle driver's test? And I'm like, fuck it. And I go for a third try at beating the written test for competency to drive a motorcycle. Third time, I crushed that shit. Crushed that shit the third time. I go up to the desk, and I says to the lady, I think I have completed the test. She goes, bing. She's using a typewriter. Oh, sir, small issue. And I'm like, I'm fucked. She's like, you have to retake the car driver's test when you take your motorcycle test. I mean, that sounds easy enough. I walk back to the testing booth, 16-year-old still there. Whip through the car driver's test, crush it, by the way. Excellent. I remembered all the information. 25 feet before a railroad, 15 feet before a bus. Come on, it's just easy, easy. Walk back. I'm like, I finished it. Am I good? And she's like, yeah, you're all done with the written. Now all you have to do is the physical test. And I'm like, how is it that easy for the written? I did not retain any of the information. I feel like I should not be able to get away with this. Now, many of you guys who are watching live might have already heard this story before and might be like, oh, it's a repeat. Well, now we have the update because I had to go take the physical test. Now, I technically, although I need a motorcycle license to drive my Vespa, I cannot use my Vespa as the vehicle for the test. They require for you to use one of the more conventional motorcycles. So I'm like, shit, I'm not a guy who really wants to get a motorcycle. And so I try to reach out to anyone who I do know has a motorcycle. And the only person who I know is Michael Reeves. So I'm like, yo, Michael, do you mind if I use your motorcycle to pass the motorcycle test? And God bless his heart, he's like, yeah, absolutely. That'd be totally fine. And I'm like, let's go. And so I go to hang out at Michael's, and he's teaching me how to use it. And I'm recognizing pretty quickly that motorcycles are a lot different than Vespas. A motorcycle is like a manual transmission car, and a Vespa is like an automatic transmission car. On a Vespa, all you do is fucking brake, done. On a motorcycle, there's gears. There's a clutch. There's a foot brake. What? And I have to learn all of this to do a test to be able to ride my Vespa. And I'm like, I'm kind of anxious about it. And I think Michael can sense this. And he says, oh, don't worry. The test is super easy. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, you'll see. So I practice. I ride around a bit, and I get a bit adjusted to it. It's not too bad. I feel like somewhat confident on the motorcycle. Not nearly as confident as I am on a Vespa, of course. But I learned how to drive cars with a manual transmission. So the idea of a clutch with my hand is just kind of reverse. So it's instead of clutch with foot, it's clutch with hand. And instead of gear shift with hand, it's gear shift with feet. All right, fair enough. Anyway, I learned how to drive this motorcycle a little bit. And I show up to the DMV, and I'm like, yo, can I take the test? And I notice there's like a couple testers. One of the proctors in front of me is testing someone on a car driving. Like a car, like to drive their car, right? And when they're testing the guy for the car, they're like, hey, can you show me the hand signs? And the guy who's there is like in his car. And he's like, the hand signs? And the proctor's like, yes, the hand signs. Bear in mind, I am second in line, so I'm watching this intently. And the guy goes like this. He's like he's about to whip. And the proctor immediately goes, no, it's. And I was like, what the fuck are you? What is? And I'm sitting there with Michael. Michael's right next to me. I'm like, Michael. Psst, Michael. He's like, what? I'm like, what the fuck are the hand signs? Turns out there's like 20 hand signs for motorcycles I never knew. And they were quizzing, coincidentally, the guy in a car on the motorcycle hand signs. Now, I know this one because of bikes and this one. This is left. This is right. I knew that. But I was like, what the fuck is this? And so all of a sudden, I get a bit nervous for this test. Finally, my proctor comes out, and I'm like prepared now that I've done a bit of notes. And right before the proctor comes out, they send away Michael. They're like, Michael, or they don't call Michael. They're like, sir, you are not allowed to stay here. And Michael's like, okay. And he walks away. And so it's just me. It's just me alone and stuck there with this motorcycle that I'm somewhat confident in driving because I've driven it, for 10 minutes with this proctor and Michael gone. We did have Bluetooth headsets that were connected to each other. So I was like, maybe he'll talk to me, but he didn't. So I was like, I am all alone. That is okay. The lady goes through and she's like, show me where the starter is. I'm like, she's like, show me where the turnoff is. I'm like, she's like, show me the clutch, show me the brake, show me the blinker, show me this the horn. I'm doing all the things, and I'm feeling somewhat good until she hits me with the, now show me the dimmer. I'm like, what the fuck is the dimmer? Clearly, she can see I'm a little confused. She's like, the lights. I'm like, okay, it's this one. Finally, it's done. It's done. I've done the first portion. She didn't even ask me the hand signs, which this isn't a big part of the story, but it's confusing to me that they asked the dude in the car who would almost never need to use hand signs, barring his car not having any lights at all. But they didn't ask me in the motorcycle what the hell the hand signs were. That confused me because I was really ready for it too. I was going to run a joke too. I was going to be like, this is when cops are ahead. Anyway, we go over to the testing site. which again, if you remember from my drawing earlier, is basically a giant penis. And the way it worked is I started here, this me here on my little motorcycle. And I had to go from here around the cones, around the loop of the ball of the penis twice, and then back up the cones. Again, I've ridden the Vespa for 1,000 miles. 1,000 miles. But I was kind of nervous because right when I was at the start, the lady's like, a few things to note. If you hit a cone, you are done. If your foot touches the ground, you are done. If you go outside the lines, you are done. And again, although I have a lot of experience driving the Vespa, I don't have as much experience on this motorcycle. So I'm like, all right, fuck. And I go through the first part of the test. And I start my foot down here and I kick off and she goes, nope. I'm like, what? And she's like, back up, sir. You're not allowed to have your foot down unless you're behind the cone. Start over. I'm like, okay, fuck. So I start to go and I'm going real slow. Like I'm basically like wobbling. You know when you're riding a bike and you stop pedaling and you have to wobble to keep it up? I'm basically doing that. I'm like wobbling. I'm so nervous. I'm trying to dodge the cones. I start going around. I'm like anxious. And then I get a little bit more confident. I'm kind of cruising through this circle. I'm like, all right, fuck it, man. Just fuck it. Just fucking do it. Just fucking do it, Ludwig. Stop being a fucking pussy. You have to go through reverse sides. I'm like, all right, come on. And I get here and I put my foot down. I look back at her and I'm like, fuck yeah. And she looks at me with this face. She's like, great. You passed the first part. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah. And she's like, the second part is going to be a little bit tougher. I'm like, what? The second part, ignore all of these cones. They're gone now. Now your job is to go through here, around twice, and then back out. But you have to be very careful not to cut the corner or go too far here. And I'm like, all right. And then she stops and she goes, and do it slower. I'm like, what? I had basically been letting the bike carry itself on the first part. I don't know how I was meant to go slower. And as she's explaining to me, because she had like a little, she had like a little diagram she was drawing on to show me the path I was supposed to take. In my headphones, I start to hear like really loud audio. And it's like, Overwatch 2 Widowmaker highlights. I'm like, what the fuck is this? But I don't have time to focus on it because it's the Bluetooth in my helmet. It's not headphones. But I don't have time to focus on it because I'm literally in the middle of listening to this woman. And so I'm like, okay. And I just kind of thumbs up and I just go for it. Because I don't want to like take off my helmet, have her yell at me or whatever. As I'm driving, it switches again, audio. It sounds like it's a video. And it's like, why the Joker is actually the hero of Batman. Batman is stealing money from the poor and giving it to the rich. The Joker is actually the one who is truly providing value to the people of Gotham. And I'm literally riding through, like wobbling here, going as slow as I possibly can, while listening to bass-boosted YouTube shorts is what it sounds like, or TikToks in my head. I make it around here. I'm stressed the fuck out. It goes to some other one. Batman's last mistake in Gotham. As I turn out here, I'm so nervous because the audio, I can't even think. I cut it a little bit wide. I go back in. I almost fall here because I brake so much because I panicked about cutting it too far that I super gas it, but I was tensed on the clutch, so it just makes a huge loud noise. And then I go, and I blurt out at the end, and then I stop. And I immediately rip off my helmet, and the lady walks over, and she's like, cut that last corner a little wide, but you're all set. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, go back to the window. You're all set. I'm like, am I good to get my license? She's like, yeah. And she walks away. I walk back in. I celebrate with Michael. And he's like, yeah, let's go. And immediately I'm like, Michael, do you happen to be watching something? And he's like, he was watching YouTube shorts on his phone that somehow connected to the Bluetooth of my helmet while I was in the middle of the test. And during it, he was like literally looking through, and you know how YouTube shorts are almost all captioned, so he didn't need audio? He was like, I wonder why the audio is not working. And it was because it was in my ears during the test. By the way, It cannot be stated enough how shockingly easy it was to get my motorcycle license. I now can legally ride a motorcycle on a highway going 70 miles an hour. Because I proved that I can do a test after 2 times failing and 1 time succeeding, and I can go in first gear around a small circle, I am now able to literally ride it on highways, which is crazy to me. That is crazy to me. It seems it's a little concerning. And Michael had a funny theory about this. He was like, yeah, my theory is that they want you to die because the largest donors of organ in the state of California are motorcycle drivers. And I'm like, son of a bitch. They want my goddamn liver, those motherfuckers. Anyway, I now legally am able to drive my Vespa. I don't think I'll get a motorcycle. I will stick to my Vespa. I will stick to riding it at a cool 25 miles an hour and going to get coffee and maybe a little bit of food, and that's about it for me. But at least I'm doing it legally now, so that's a win.